Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Lisa Dublin. I'm a health and life coach. I help women to live, to lead, and to speak with confidence. Welcome to Basement Chronicles Live. We're supposed to go on live like 3 times a week, but it hasn't been happening for so many reasons. But I'm here today. Also, if you are watching me and you follow me everywhere, guess what? The new podcast episode drops today. So I'm looking at books that changed my life. I'm not sure if you are the Christian bent, this book will make sense to you. If you're not, maybe you're just curious. But this book, The Fourth Dimension, oh my goodness! Like I was so excited to record the podcast that like you can hear the excitement about the book and everything it means to me in that podcast episode. So wherever you get your podcasts, it's on YouTube, it's on Basement Chronicles. Just please subscribe to Basement Chronicles on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can find it there as well. So every 10 episodes, I look back and I look at a book that has changed my life. So I've looked at Atomic Habits. I've looked at The 9 to 5 Millionaire, Think and Grow Rich. And this is the fourth installment because this is episode number 40, 40. So we're getting up there in the numbers, and I'm just really enjoying podcasts. And you know what? Like, I live here in Edmonton, if you're listening to me from other parts of the world, and the number of podcasters here, right, just right here in Edmonton, like somebody, we need to come together because there are so many people who are doing podcasts right now. And I feel like it's a matter of just simply finding your tribe, finding a podcast that you love, and just kind of rocking with it. That's what I've been doing with a couple podcasts for years. I've been listening to them. And I feel like, even as the book speaks about incubation and about how to go about getting something from the spiritual realm into the natural realm, I feel like the things that we listen to actually inform who we become. So it's no, like, it's not strange that I'm doing a podcast because I listen to them and I'm so excited by them. And I hope that happens for you too. Let me say a great good morning to my folks on Facebook, Watch Radio family. Good morning to you. On YouTube, if you're watching me, even on Instagram, good morning. The topic this morning is a sensitive one, it's an exciting one. And after I wrote the title, and the title was, might as well love myself. What is the alternative? And I didn't mean the title to be that you're supposed to be in resignation, but as a starting point for approaching Black History Month. That's what we're celebrating in February. And as a starting point for the fact that not everybody is at the same level of loving themselves, appreciating themselves. Take it out of the placard bearing political realm. Just the basic fact of this is all you've got. Okay? This is it. This hair, these lips, this nose, this mouth, this body, these fingers, this voice. This is all you've got. So to not love it is to, in a sense, and I love to say it, I speak about it in some of my poetry, to not love who you are is, in a sense, to be this person who is a living suicide. Like every time you negate who you are, every time you choose the other, every time you privilege other people's things over yourself, it's like you are dying a little more to who you are, to your value, to who God made you to be. And I'm really big on that sense of self-love that is just springs unbidden and does not depend on what anybody else is saying or doing. It just simply depends on you. Where is this coming from? Okay, let me set the stage. So, beginning today, I'm going out and I have a couple speaking engagements because it is Black History Month, and anybody and their mama is speaking this month, right? Everybody's speaking this month. And I guess we have a challenge, come to think about it, of sustaining being out there and spreading the message of we matter, our history matters, self love matters. We need to be able to do that outside of the February rush, I call it. But I mean, I'm grateful. So I'm going to a school to speak today, and I also have a virtual appearance in an ERG with this with I think it's with the government or something. Anywho, here's what I've realized, and this is in the last 2 or 3 years. There is a lot of censorship going on where matters of EDI are concerned. If you are in Edmonton, if you are living here in Canada, wherever you are, would you agree? There is a lot of censorship going on. So, for example, for some of the ERGs that I have to do this month, there have had to be tons of meetings with tons of guidelines as to what you can say and what you cannot say. And as much as we are not the United States, it is very true that what the United States does absolutely affects us. Absolutely. And so you see that there's a pushback on the very derogatory labeling of EDI or DEI, as they call it in the US. Like when you call it woke culture, you reduce it to a thing that it's not. That's what I think. And so just the labels that we attribute to each other and that we put on movements can affect how people deal with them and treat them. Isn't that true? And I wanted to speak about that today because it's something I think deeply about: being Black, being immigrant, being female, being from a subset of a subset of a subset of a subset. I like to say it that way. I'm from the Caribbean. That's a subset of that region. So I'm from a small island in the Caribbean. That's a subset of the Caribbean. Then that's a subset of being Black, being immigrant. That then woman as opposed to male as opposed to female, female as opposed to male, and everything in between. So many subsets, and having to make sense of it all. I mean, it's good. Yeah, there's no confusion here. Let's put it that way. And I'll tell you why, which is why I brought up the topic. Because it seems to me, I'm going back in my mind, okay? I want to cast your mind back to when this really caught fire. Not when it started. It started long before George Floyd. Let's face it, there were so many other killings before in the United States and to some extent right here in Canada and around the world. There were many killings. There were many injustices that started to boil that pot of racial reckoning. But it came to a head May 25th, 2020. I'll never forget that. Like that knee on the neck, that silencing of voice, that because of that silencing, cutting off the voice, the life, from it rose life. But what kind of life rose out of it is something that I think we now have to reckon with. Here's a simple question. Why are governments, why are people, organizations, establishments, why are they clawing back at EDI initiatives? Why? I have a couple ideas as to why that happens, okay? And I think as a life coach, as just the kind of person I am, I will always go back to, was it real in the first place? I'm also a poet. I do that as well. And I want to play for you that I wrote in 2021. This was in the heyday. This was when EDI movements began to flourish. This was after George Floyd and that push, the Black Lives Matter movement really came out in earnest. Even at that time, the Me Too movement, everything was a boiling pot. And we had the front row seat because we were all home watching, brooding, listening. All the while, yes, we were integrating, but some people were actually going deeper and deeper into silos. And I believe this is what we're seeing today. And it always occurred to me that if this is a knee-jerk reaction can never really last. It can never really last. It can never really take root. That if you are going to be reactionary as opposed to proactive, at some point when there's no longer the urgency, in inverted commas, you will have to reckon with what you're doing. And that's where we are today. Back in 2021, I was still working with an organizer. I was working at the University of Alberta, and I was the chair of the EDI committee of the Non-Academic Staff Association. And it was a really like turbulent time, race relations. There was also a push to try to understand and to try to get along. And so, in my capacity as chair, I was responsible for getting, people to come in. We looked at microaggressions. We looked at understanding different cultures. All the things that we did during the pandemic, all the ways that we came together. One such lunch and learn stands out in my mind, and I want to tell you about it. I think we were speaking about just the toll that Black people face in the workplace. And I invited somebody here from Edmonton to speak on that matter. And this is what happened. I kid you not. And you tell me if this is what we've had to deal with. So I think basically most of the audience on that luncheon, we had like record numbers. We had great numbers coming out because people wanted to understand each other. Anywho, my Black facilitator for that lunch and learn was very angry and had not healed from any of the wounds that had been inflicted on her in the workplace from dealing with microaggressions, the racism, from being passed over, from being denied, from being, I think she was also unjustly dismissed. And that is the experience of so many immigrants, so many Black people in a culture that is mostly white, as in here in Edmonton. And she was angry and she let them have it. Okay, you can imagine what that looked like. She's like, you people need to sit down and listen. And I'm the facilitator. Like, I'm like, okay. I'm trying to kind of, like be conciliatory. People came of their own volition. And as much as we want to do the hard things, we want to do it in a way that is received, that will bring results. It's not just a matter of flexing your rage. It's a matter of getting results. And since that time, after seeing the discomfort and the way that it didn't go down well, it didn't work. It didn't work. And I'm not saying that we have to do the passive aggressive thing or be super polite when there are things that are not even in that realm that need to be said. Don't get me wrong. But in communication, I always ask the question, what is the end result? Are you there to just show that you're angry and that you can be angry? Or are you there to speak about racial relations, on the fact that microaggressions and racism take a toll on Black people and people of color in the workplace? It does. Is that what you want people to come to that recognition of, or you're just there to flex? And I'm not even sure that maybe she had thought about it, but the anger came out. And from what I've seen, I'm being in a lot of these like lunch and learns and so on, where we might have lost people is in how we approached these topics. And it's not on us, because if people actually wanted to learn and wanted to do better in spite of delivery, we would have been persevering. And I thought to myself, in this dispensation where there's a label on so-called woke culture, in the dispensation of Trump back in the White House, might it be that the push for racial equality, the push for better relations and better treatment of Black people in the workplace, might it be that we need to do it differently? I want to tell you a story. I like to tell stories when I speak and, present that kind of thing. I want to tell you a story that for me is an analogy of how from now, well, I've been going out like that from now on. Like, there's a way for you to get results. See, I want to tell you the story of the wind and the sun. Have you heard it? How the wind, I think it's an Aesop's fable, but I'm not sure. The wind and the sun were trying to get this man to remove his coat. Have you guys heard that story? So the wind came first. The wind huffed and puffed, okay? And just blew and put out his chest and, because I'm the wind and I can just make things happen. And that's how the wind came. And you know what the man did? He pulled his coat closer and tighter to him. The more the wind huffed and puffed, is the more he tightened his coat. And that approach did not work. Anywho, it was the sun's turn. And the sun said, hey, sit down and see how it's done, okay? I'm the sun. I'm all this. All I have to do is to smile and be myself and smile again and be bigger and better and be all of me, because I'm not going anywhere. And the sun smiled and the man got hotter and hotter. And the sun continued to smile and got hotter and hotter until guess what? The man removed his coat. And this is by no means a call for being passive. This is by no means a call for not doing anything or taking injustice lying down. Absolutely not. This is a call that perhaps our approach might need to be adjusted going forward. So what does that mean, Lisa? What exactly? I was thinking, I've really been thinking about this, I think I do more thinking, like just walking around thinking than anything else, right? And it is, love yourself. You're a Black person. That means something. That self-love spills out into everything you do. That self-love is the consistency of how you show up. It's that sense of, don't care what happens, I'm not going anywhere, I'm here. So we would have to deal with it. And we're going to do it in a sense that if I'm not going to move, okay, and I know that racism is wrong, prejudice is wrong, systemic things that happen to people, they are wrong, and I have to continue coming up against it all the time. I'm going to do it in a way that says, no, you are wrong, I am right. In this sense, your racism is wrong. No, this is wrong. And it's tiring. That's why we need communities like Think and When African Women Talk, and even all of the communities that we are now seeing cropping up and have been in relationship, Black people together, all of the BIPOC people together, because it's tiring. But it could just simply be that we just right now need to stand our ground from a place of love and from a place that I am not going anywhere. So this has to be, because if I'm not going to move, and if I understand that my humanity gives me every foundation to be right, to be nothing missing, nothing broken, no, then this other faulty thing has to break, not me. We need to hold the line right now. We need to double down on being ourselves and loving ourselves and being that sun that just consistently shines and consistently shows up for each other, for ourselves, but in our essence. And that's where perhaps, the next thing I hope I'm making sense. If you're listening to me, say something, say hi, wherever you're listening to me, at Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn. Let's have this chat this morning, because it seems to me the way the knee-jerk reaction after George Floyd did not quite work. It planted deep seeds. It showed things up. Lots of great things came out of it. What does it mean, however? You've got to ask the question, if it were that effective, how is it that all of these EDI movements are now being clawed back? What happened that it did not quite reach into people's hearts to effect change? And people are barefaced and bold-faced saying that they're changing things. Like, I am listening to these officials trying to justify changing EDI into all sorts of other things that have nothing to do with you reckoning with my Black self, with you reckoning with the fact that I'm here to stay, and I matter. I'm bold-faced changing things up. In other words, did you ever matter before? Now, before I continue, I let me see if I can give you a little bit of a poem that I wrote. So I do performance poetry. I have a couple performances coming up. I still am taking, if you're interested in me coming to your school, your organization, whatever, I'm still taking a couple, well, maybe not next week, but anywho. Let's see if you can hear this. If you can hear this poem that I actually I wrote the poem in 2021, because I just didn't buy, I'm that kind of, I guess, discerning person. I didn't buy it. I didn't buy the movement. I didn't buy all of these. I just didn't buy it. And so I wrote a poem called What Will We Do When We Come Out Again? It is on YouTube. I've got a poetry channel called Lisa M. Dublin. So I've got Basement Chronicles, and then I have the poetry channel that's all for my performance poetry. So go follow me there if you're liking this and you want to know more about what I do and how I can potentially come into your organization. And because sometimes art is a way to reach people in a way that just giving the hard word, it cannot do it. Art can do it in a tasteful way, in a way that is disarming. Okay, that's what I've found, and I'm really like experimenting with this. And so I'm going to share my screen with you and sharing some screen. Let me see if I can do this. And watch this poem. Tell me if you can hear as well. I'll just play a little bit of it, okay? So this is my poem, What Will We Do? I wrote it and I got it recorded. A lovely company right here in Edmonton, a nice studio, helped me with the recording. And it's just been living. I haven't done much with it, to tell you the truth. After the shoulders so tugged of the grandparents who survived, after the amazement of a Saturday night stroll on White Ave is followed by the hysteria of a jam-packed WEM on a Sunday afternoon, after your acquaintance sprinkles a spit of blessing on your face like it was before 2020 at Browers, after getting squelched in the sweaty armpits of friends you didn't need to avoid for 2 years, after the heady largesse of tipping waiters up and down the ICE district high on the fly that we can dine again inside, after that pinch of reality, sitting with a friend on a bench in a park, close and okay, after all these nice and easy things, what will we do when we come out again? Will we allow the fracking of our foundations with new traditions of love? Because for a time, the inflection point was the exposure of a live wire of truth, the likes of which we had not seen before, that triad of disruption: Donald Trump, COVID-19, and George Floyd. Will we approach each other this time with a humble understanding, remembering that we shared the shame of hatred, that together we witness the brunt of brutality at its brazen worst? Because if that knee on that neck is happening in the open, we can just imagine what happens in the prisons and on secluded country roads and in back alley encounters and in boardroom covens and in colorblind medical decisions and in biased classrooms. Yes, everywhere there is inequality and pride, voicelessness, and the easy lies that function as the official version of truth. What will we do when we face each other again? Will you remember that you cringed in retrospect at the hate you gave? The hate with which you laced the workplace? The unfair stereotypes of the stranger? The nitpicking of the immigrant manager stemming from your irritation at his presence, rising from your subconscious outrage that she didn't need you to be validated? Does this burn? Did we learn, or was this vicarious regret for nothing? This cause is urgent, divergent, transcendent, but is it enough? Will we bear witness to the new spirit of the age where multiple races join together to topple the rage against change, cut the umbilical cord of privilege, take up the arms of contrition, and cancel the culture of hate no matter its decorated perpetrators? We were made for such a time as this, not later. We were made for a time called now, not future. We recognize that to birth a more feeling society, we work from the inside out, even while, in a sense, we cleanse the exterior. We recognize that while we enact laws to corral hate and try to cordon off prejudice with appropriate policy, our public contrition must not be diluted. That some corpses will pass out with the sullied bathwater of history. That by continuing to keep statues and continuing to honor these names, we argue that racist tendencies should be frozen in old context, not realizing that this melting away is necessary to usher in a new age. Those who cry cancel culture are afraid that we will cancel everything, that nothing will remain, admitting inadvertently that our past has been wholly racist and is therefore primed for a new beginning. What will we do when we face each other again? Will we step out into the darkness of a love we've never given before, on a scale perhaps never needed before? Recognizing that to love each other as we love ourselves is to admit that we are equal. Will we remember to be different when we come out again? All right. Okay, let me stop sharing the screen. And like for me it's just how prescient this was, right? This was just me looking at what was happening and not trusting it and saying, wait a minute, when we come out again, when life returns to normal, are we going to be this person? Are we going to be the people who still care? And the fact that they're ending all of these movements, it tells there should be a push, yes, to fight on the outside, absolutely, to protect us with laws and to do all of the things, but there's also supposed to be a push towards self-love and to loving who you are and to not be the living suicide. Because was it yesterday I was listening to Bob Marley in the vehicle. He was playing on CBC, and I was driving my son to basketball and telling him about Bob Marley and the impact that he had on the world in a time when it was also turbulent, and the fact that he spoke about love, he spoke about mental slavery, and part of that is carrying yourself around in your head like you were other and somebody else was the standard. That is the biggest revolution that we can ever have. To make yourself the standard, to make yourself the it and not somebody else. And I know it's all around us, particularly if you live in maybe North America. You don't live in a place where it's a homogenous society like a lot of us come from, right? So you see around you faces and people doing things who don't look like you. You still have a responsibility then to dig deeper and to find the spaces that can validate you and to validate your own self. And for me, my push and my talks and everything this year, and they've been for a while, is to push us and to be the sun in your own life, to privilege yourself and to privilege who you are as a person, as a race, to take it out of the political placards and to just simply be, you know what? This is me. If God made me this way, it has to be good. In which world do you get to define me, a created being just like me? Why do you think you get to define me? Why do you think you get to define me? I'm going to go to the person who made me. And if he says that I am blessed and highly favored, if he says that I have nothing missing and nothing broken, if he says that I have his mind, you can't tell me otherwise. And it's not even a matter of, oh my gosh, because you're Black, you need God or so. No, it's not a matter of that, because on the other side, there's a pride. There's a pride to believe. And I always say that, like, why is nobody seeing that this is pride? It is pride. It is prideful. It is being haughty to believe that you're better than somebody else. That's a whole race. What? That's generations of believing you're better than somebody else. No, you're in for trouble, because you're going to come up against people who just don't buy it. What are you going to do then? You're going to go mad. You're going to go crazy. You're going to do stuff because you're losing it. And a lot of the fighting, a lot of the trying to put Black people in their place is because there's that threat. Anyway, we're going to continue tomorrow, okay? Like, welcome to Basement Chronicles Live. Might as well love yourself, because, like, what is the alternative? The alternative is to become a living suicide, to walk in your head as if you were other, to look out at yourself as if you did not matter. And we're not having that here. Excuse me. No, no, we're not doing that here, right? Tomorrow, I want to examine two things. I want to, it seems like these things don't matter, but I think words have power. Do you agree that words have power? Join me tomorrow. There are certain things that I want to look at. I remember, again, in this heyday, I remember once sitting in a room. It was a training session, still at the university. And there happened to be, I think there's a white guy in the back. And one of the first things he said was, I know that I'm here and I have white privilege. Hear me well. The way that it was said, that I have white privilege, gave him privilege. And I wonder whether, in the same way we talk about white privilege, I'm not saying bury your head in the sand like an ostrich, like it didn't happen. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying words have meaning and words convey meaning. So the more you say you have white privilege, you might not think it doesn't mean anything. What happens, however, if I come into a room as a facilitator and I say, in this room, there is no white privilege. If you as a white person, you feel naked or intimidated, if that is said, it means that the label of white privilege meant something. At the same time, here's the other word that I have a problem with. We talk about here in Canada being racialized. You guys, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, okay? But I studied English. And I've got a master's in English. Not that it even matters, because if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But when you add IZED to a word, it doesn't change. If something is caramelized, I have changed its nature. Why are we talking about racialized people? At which point do we move the conversation forward? Somebody tell me, like, if you have cast me in this very ironclad label of racialized, what are you saying about me? When does it change? What are we even talking about? I absolutely hate the word. I think it conveys a meaning that perpetuates where we are today. If I remove the word racialized, if you feel hope, it means that it was doing something to the opposite. Words have meaning, and I want to examine that tomorrow, because it seems like in this whole big conversation, official conversation of meanings and words and so on, those little personal spiritual things don't matter. But in my opinion, just because of how not subscribing to them has freed my mind, I understand that they do carry weight. So join me tomorrow. We're going to continue the conversation. Don't forget, go listen to the podcast. Please subscribe if this is making sense to you. Subscribe to this week's podcast, The Fourth Dimension. It's the 40th episode of my podcast. My goodness, thank you. Do you guys know that they say that people don't get past like the, is it the 13th podcast? So I guess I'm doing something, which is good. But I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. And please share this post if you think it's powerful, if you think you learned something, share it in your WhatsApp groups, on your status, tag me. I will acknowledge it, all of the things. I'll see you tomorrow on Basement Chronicles Live. Bye.